Hi, everybody. Welcome to What in the World is Dyscalculia, the podcast that is all about the specific learning disorder in math. You can hear it named properly as dyscalculia. You could hear it called a math disability, a learning disability in math, a specific learning disorder in math. Lots of different names that are used for our different way of thinking about, processing, and remembering math. This podcast is supported and sponsored by EduCalc Learning, and you can visit educalclearning.com to learn about our programs and services for teacher training, how to become a certified dyscalculia specialist, and for our classes for individual students who have dyscalculia. You can also visit the nonprofit website, www.thedtri.org. That's the Dyscalculia Training and Research Institute. There's lots of free information on there, as well as training and classes for larger schools, districts, state DOEs, education agencies, and larger groups. So, what are we talking about today? That is the question. I wanted to give you some information from a really great research study and then talk about what does that tell us we can do? Because the research is great and important, but if we don't know what to do with it in the classroom, then it just doesn't give us a lot of practical information. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're taking the article titled Prediction, Cognition, and the Brain, and this was published in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience. It's a really awesome article. We're going to get a bunch of podcasts out of it, and hopefully you have time to go find it on Google Scholar yourself. Open it up. It's really fascinating. But here's the first little bit I wanted to bring to you. Really important information from this article, and it focuses on how the human brain uses prediction, literally in all parts of life, every moment that we're awake. We're going to tie it into math class today and how we can use prediction, which is a natural, normal activity the brain engages in, whether or not we're aware of it, and how we can use that to support students with dyscalculia. Here's why it's important. Prediction, according to Bubick and the other authors, allows us to act instead of reacting to events. Now, in education, we have a lot of fancy words for that. Metacognition, problem solving, planning, executive function, all of that involves this ability to stop, pause, think about what's happening, and make a plan of action that we can follow through on. Now, for students with dyscalculia, or even just low numeracy, multi-language learners, trauma background, anxiety disorders, those students tend to be in a very reactive state, especially when it comes to math class. So we need to desensitize that reactive state. We need to de-escalate. And we want to get students to a place where they can look at a math problem and think about the best way to solve it and what kind of tools they need. Is it a formula they need? Are there rules and regulations and steps and procedures that have to be followed? Are there key features that will help us recognize patterns? How should we best answer this question? When we're reactive, we cannot see all of those things. We just panic and grab the first thought we have. It's not usually the right one, which is part of why our students are working so hard and not getting the results that they want. So as we're talking about that prediction, we're also going to keep in mind another point from the article. Learning can be triggered by short-term, so happens a lot, and it doesn't have to take forever, exposure to non-random patterns. That's really important for this predictive piece, the non-random part. We're not going to just grab anything like we would, let's say, with a calculator. We're going to pick patterns that have purpose and meaning to the lesson. Not that I don't want you using calculators. There's a time and a place where they're absolutely the right tool. And then there's a time and a place where other tools are more effective. So here's what's usually happening for your students with dyscalculia. They're guessing They're not sure what tool to use, what method to use, what is being asked of them. So they're taking their best guess. They don't have enough information to make an educated guess most of the time. Dyscalculia makes all of that math knowledge stored in that parietal lobe look like a kitchen junk drawer with no organization. That lack of clarity and confidence means that we don't have very strong neurological connections. We don't have a very good, strong, deep schema around whatever math topic we're looking at. And that's not going to get us very far. We want stronger connections because our little dendrites are connecting with our axons. And the more we're repeating and predicting and being right with our prediction, the stronger that gets. Here's the thing though, guys. Those connections also get stronger if we are repeating the wrong information. That's why the older a student gets, the more we have to step in with support, the more we have to step in with extended time, and the more we're going back to that direct, explicit instruction, simply because we really don't have time for a lot of conceptual conversations. Those aren't going to get us to mastery by Friday's test. So when we are not focusing on clarity, precision, and accuracy, then we are inadvertently strengthening wrong information. We don't want to do it. So here's how we can fix it. Keep short-term exposure. That means spaced, repeated practice throughout the school year at classwork, at homework, and for students with dyscalculia also during assessments. Short-term exposure. We're going back to the same tools all the time. Not for just randomly grabbing a reference sheet or a formula sheet that has a million things written down and we don't know what any of them are. No, we're going to tie the tool to the topic at hand. In earlier elementary, that's going to be a lot of 1 to 100 charts. And we're going to use the 1 to 100 chart for adding, for subtracting, for counting on, for comparing, for estimating. But each topic, we're going back to that same tool. It is not random. It is showing us everything in context. And then as we use different vocabulary and solve different types of problems from this same tool, we're building that mental number line and we're increasing numeracy. Later on, about third, fourth grade, it's going to be a multiplication list, not the chart, the old-fashioned times tables written out, because again, we want the cohesiveness of the pattern of multiplication, and we want to go back to the same tool for multiplying, dividing, listing multiples, listing factors, LCM, GCF, looking at prime and composite, looking at exponents and square roots. We want to keep going back to that same tool. It's also going to build a little fluency and a little speed over time. Checking our notes to make sure we're doing the right kind of work for the right problem, and having a worked example so we can check off those steps and procedures and make sure we're not losing place. This is going to help your students constantly check their work, check their own internal prediction. The more they make a prediction, test their hypothesis, and know they're right, the stronger their thinking is going to get. And that means the faster and easier the recall is going to become. Another really important benefit that I love, when we do this method of using our support tools and we're constantly checking to confirm that we're doing the right thing, we only ever have exposure to the right answer. So we're not accidentally strengthening something that's wrong. We're only strengthening something that's right. So how are you going to do it? It's going to be very simple. I don't want you to change everything you're doing in the classroom. I want you to shift the way you're asking questions. So here's some nice examples. Instead of asking, what is 6 times 7? You're going to say, John, grab your multiplication list. Find 6 times 7. What answer do you see? Another one, instead of saying things like, who can tell me the Pythagorean theorem? And then You stare at the room blankly. The same two hands go up in the air. Those kids are mad. You never call on them anymore, and nobody else wants to be engaged. And then you're running into a lot of trouble. Change that conversation. Say something like, Brenda, check your notes. What did you write down for Pythagorean theorem? So hopefully you can see just shifting the way we ask these questions. First of all, if I don't know the answer, I don't feel as embarrassed to say so because I have something to do. Check the multiplication list or check my notes. I can check whether or not I know the right answer off the top of my head. Also, it's important for us as teachers because the answer gives us a ton of information. If John has trouble finding the right answer for 6 times 7 using his multiplication list, I know immediately how to step in and see what he's doing wrong and correct that precisely so he can use that tool better. He can find his right answers. Now he can finish the rest of the work in class. If Brenda doesn't have anything written down for Pythagorean theorem, she's probably not the only one. I'm going to remember this is a good time to walk around the room and say, all right, guys, make sure you've got your notes open. I'm putting Pythagorean theorem up on the board. Let's all write it down right now. So now I'm doing a math notebook check, getting a quick grade without having to collect all of them. I'm looking to see who wrote things down, who hasn't. Is it correct? Is it not? If someone missed a class, or they were just out of focus at that moment, they have time to catch up. So this really engages differently. And now I'm using my question and answers and my class discussion not as a way of putting people on the spot and making them anxious and terrified, and maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But instead, I'm using this as a teaching method to increase connections, strengthen that neural network. Anyone else in the room who heard me say, John, look up 6 times 7. Brenda, check your notes for Pythagorean theorem. They now know what they can do to support themselves. So I'm also helping kids who aren't sure and might not be engaged. They're still getting the right tools for themselves. I want the questions and answers to immediately happen correctly, as close together as possible. I don't want to ask a question and then tell someone they're wrong and then ask another person in the room. I don't want to move on from a quiz or a test and get feedback to the student 2 or 3 days later. I don't want to put them on a computer program, and if they get the wrong answer, nobody knows why, so they keep guessing and move on. No, no, no. I have to make the question, the prediction, and the correct answer happen almost simultaneously. That is what is going to strengthen the connection. And that makes it easier to remember the information later on when I'm looking for it. Now, of course, if you've been listening, you know that for students with dyscalculia, that parietal lobe will lose math information over time. So I'm still going to give accommodations during assessments, even though I'm using these instructional methods and these strategies to make stronger connections. I'm going to remember the parietal lobe is working against the student. Their cognitive load might be high. Their anxiety might be high. So I'm going to make sure the accommodations exist, especially during assessments. You will see that when you change the wording, and you always go back to those proper tools in the moment, that you are going to get some better performance from your students over time. So we are going to build long-term skills. We are going to build better recall, but the same way we're going to let students wear prescription glasses when they read, and we're going to make sure our type 1 diabetic students have access to insulin. We're also going to make sure students with dyscalculia have their accommodations. But give this a try. I know we're getting pretty close to the end of the school year. Most of us are also about to roll into testing, which makes for a whole interesting situation. Uh, but even now, start to change the way you ask questions, include that predictive power and the constantly, instantly checking the right answer, and see what kind of difference you get by the end of the year. You will see a lot of change for your students with dyscalculia. If you'd like to learn more about dyscalculia, please email me at any time, Honora at educalclearning.com. You can also find me at Honora at thedtri.org. And if you have some comments about our podcast or topics you'd like to see included, email me that as well. Thanks for listening to What in the World is Dyscalculia? And we will talk again soon.